Welcome to the Secret Stash podcast. I'm your host, Kylina Felzone. Today's guest is Erica Rasmussen, the Communications and Development Director at the Community Foundation of the Gunnison Valley. In this episode, we talk about how she uses her past struggles as motivation to help inspire others to tackle what brings them down so that they can apply their strengths and pursue happiness. This episode is brought to you by Crested Butte State of Mind. It's okay to not be okay. CB State of Mind is based on the belief that you are never alone. They are here to help you connect with your inner power and ability to find solutions to the issues you are facing. CB State of Mind connects our community to resources, education, and free counseling scholarships to stand up to stigma, increase mental wellness, and lower the rate of suicide in the Gunnison Valley. Good morning, everybody. We have an amazing podcast today. We are here with Erica Rasmussen.
That's me.
From the Community Foundation of the Gunnison Valley. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting topics today.
Yes, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I think it's a really important subject in our community, especially, we're in the middle of this insane pandemic. We're in month 8 or 9.
They have all come together.
Yes, they've all come together. It's been a long year. And, going into the winter season and, we're still in isolation and people still are quarantining and, work is iffy for a lot of people and being able to, pay your bills and keep up with everything that's going on. We're just trying to bring some knowledge and some inspiration to people out there that might be feeling the stresses of all this.
The struggle of the juggle.
The struggle of the juggle. It's real. Definitely is. So let's just start a little bit about your story. I'm going to let you talk for a little bit.
All right. Talking about ourselves. That's one of the things that I'm not always awesome at and don't always love, but I'm really glad to be here today to share my story about who I've become through my journey. And so it's kind of fitting because 3 years ago today, to the day, I was told I was likely losing my daughter during my pregnancy, and that was really tough. And I'm someone that has dealt with anxiety since I was 10 years old, and so the recipe of more anxiety added to someone that already has anxiety made me spiral. And it's been a tough 3-year journey, and fortunately my daughter is now a thriving toddler, and I'm grateful for that. However, my suffering along that was really hard. And so, like I said, it's been 3 years, and I think the first year was just kind of dealing with those emotions. The second year is probably struggling through them, and the third year is now overcoming and going from surviving to thriving. And I think that we can't be at our best if we are at our worst. And so really slowly chipping away at what brings us down the most is what is going to make us our best.
Yeah, it's a difficult journey, and I think that it's different for so many people when we have depression, anxiety, stress, and even more serious subjects of suicide. We've had a lot of suicide here in the Gunnison Valley, and I just really wanted to do this podcast to be able to share people's stories and success stories and how you made it through a lot of your challenges and you're feeling amazing. Can we talk about your younger years and when you first felt the anxiety, or how did you recognize what that was in your life?
I recognized it really early on. Like I said, at about 10 years old, I had been a people pleaser, and that isn't always the best tactic. But for me, I had grown so anxious, and I had OCD, and it made me not want to eat. To then I finally started eating and gaining a lot of weight, to then that spiraling into an eating disorder in high school and college, and then finally trying to deal with it in college. And I think one thing for me is this has been years in the making of how to make me the best me, and tackle things. And so in college, I had really hit a low spot, and my best friend had told me, only you can make you happy, Erica. And that for me at the time was insurmountable. how was I supposed to drag myself out of what I was dealing with and make myself happy when I was in a really, really dark place? And I think slowly chipping away at it was critical for me. But it actually wasn't until pretty recently when I tackled things head on and fully dealt with everything. Emotions can be like, snow piling up to eventually avalanche. And we want to prevent the avalanche. And what works for one person doesn't work for everybody. And it takes trying so many different things. And for me, over the course of several years, to actually tackle it.
And when like when you first started, when you were the younger age, did you have a support system around you, or where was that like?
No. And I think that was one thing. It was not cool growing up to have stuff that was wrong with you, especially when it came to mental health. And that was something that, I hid for years and years and years, and not until even recently have been more vulnerable and open with what I have gone through and what I'm going through and what I now can say I've overcome. And I think that is when you don't have a support system, it's really critical. And granted, I have amazing parents and came from a family that loved one another, but I kept that away from my friends in fear of what people might think of me. And that's something that is really important to get over, because we need to maximize the resources available to us, and we all need friendships. And for me, middle school is tough as it is, and to like hide stuff from your friends and remove yourself from your friends is never good, whether you're in middle school or you're not.
Yeah, and Eric, we've been talking a little bit before the show of we're trying to get the message out to instead of people struggling with this for years and years and months upon months, is taking that first step and asking somebody. And maybe you're out here and you're not surrounded by, a lot of people aren't surrounded by friends and families. Maybe they don't have family members, and that's why CB State of Mind and a lot of our nonprofits here are so critical.
Yes.
Is that we have access to amazing therapists, free help to be able to make that first step. But I've had many discussions with people where they just don't want to tell anybody their story. Somebody who's suffering that bad, they don't want to tell their friends. They don't want to reach out for help. And so how do we fix that? How do we make people comfortable where pick up the phone, make the call, and just go in?
Exactly. It can be, like jumping off the diving board into that cold swimming pool. Like, it's scary. It's not fun to talk about your feelings. It's not fun to feel bad. And I know for myself, I never wanted to be a burden. I never wanted people to think I was weak. I never wanted people feeling sorry for me. And I knew when I was in the hospital with my daughter, I mean, I should have been jumping for joy. What may not have been was, I mean, my daughter was born healthy and she was thriving, and I inside still felt like something was wrong. And I knew leaving the hospital that like I wasn't quite right. And finally 2 weeks later at her checkup, her 2-week-old checkup, I finally asked her doctor, I was like, so what's postpartum depression? And I just kept nodding and resonating with what was being said there. And finally that doctor became my doctor because I found someone I could trust. I found someone I could cry with, and totally actually deal with my feelings. And had I not had that, I don't know if I would have been able to overcome it in the way I have.
Yeah, and that first step for you was just asking your doctor, so what's postpartum? And it's just getting that first, what is this feeling that, asking somebody, because it's really hard to identify a lot of the stuff. We don't know if it's anxiety. We don't know if it's depression. We don't know if it's stress or anxiety coming in from, because of work or, but it is a, I think that's the hard part is, self-diagnosing.
Yeah.
That
Labeling,
like, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah. Labeling what we're feeling and why. I mean, none of us sitting here are doctors.
Yeah. We're not doctors.
And nor do we claim to, be them in podcasts. I think it's important to just start the conversation with someone you feel comfortable with, and that person might not be able to help you. In my case, they could, but they can help point you in the right direction. And if someone comes to you not feeling quite right, knowing how you can support them. So if you have a friend that might be having some struggles, knowing how to best help them. And that's why it's so wonderful we now have CB State of Mind doing an active role to help our community with the things that do drag them down the most.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. They're doing classes for anybody can join these classes of how to talk about those topics with friends and family. And again, I said it on the last show, but I think we all really need to be, or we should try to be more empathetic. We never know what somebody's going through.
Yes.
It's especially, I'm in the hospitality food business, right? So in my business, what I see a lot is like, let's just go have shots. There's a lot of different ways to handle it. For some people, it might be a bike ride. Yeah. For some people, it might be meditation. Mm-hmm. For some people, it might be medicine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with medicine. I think that there's a stigma attached to that. Can you tell us about your experience with the medicine that they put you on?
Yeah,
and how you dealt with that?
For me, that never worked, and I think that I tried multiple things, and that's what's hard, because you want the first thing or the second thing or the third thing or the fourth thing to work, and even from when I was in middle school to the postpartum stuff, I kept going back to the doctor, and I now am super grateful because it took that persistence for me. And my doctor is Laura Villanueva, who is now one of my favorite people in the world, who she kept pushing me to tackle my mental health, even if something wasn't working. We kept trying different things, and there definitely did come a point in time where she was like, look, Erica, I'm a disservice to you by not pushing you to get help that you need, and here's some counseling options. And for me, even pursuing those counseling options, I think I tried 4 different counselors in 1 year, and counseling for me got me from one spot to another. And lately I've found coaching to be an incredible asset to ruthlessly pursuing my happiness, which is amazing and a fun feeling to be. And so it's important for everyone to know, you can go from a tough spot to a great spot, but it does take chipping away at it. And what works for one person may not work for somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that's, definitely a message we want to get out there. That is I've had many employees through the years of hey, have you ever tried life coaching, or do you want to talk to somebody? And they're like, no, mental health's for other people, or that's for other, I can handle it. And I can kind of see where the stigma is of God, you guys, if we want to do yoga, we go to yoga class. If we want to learn Japanese, we study Japanese. If we want to get flexible, we stretch. If we want to help get our minds in a better space, it takes work. There's no magic pill. No. There's no take this and tomorrow you're going to feel great. And I think that is a part of the most important message, is to be patient with yourself. Keep trying things that work for you, not what your friend is doing, not what your parents tell you what to do. And that's where paternalism comes in. People give you advice on what they think is good for you. And I think that you are the only one that's going to know what's good for you.
And that's the thing, we're our own recipe. I mean, there's no way to magically hop on Google and say, what's going to make me happy? What works for you doesn't work for me. What worked for you yesterday may not work for you today, might work for me today, but who knows? And we have to keep trying different things. And for me, actually, coaching has made me go from that feeling of feeling okay and really ruthlessly pursuing my happiness to a state where I feel unstoppable. And the opportunity fell in my lap to start working with Anthony Paponi this fall. And that has pushed me over the edge to be thriving. And that for me feels so good after over 20 years of not really being able to fully deal with it and constantly having that storm be weathered. And for me, I now know actually his work is called Focus on the 40, and really only that 40% of what we truly can control in life. So that makes it nicer. Like, don't focus on 100%, focus on the 40 that's manageable. And then from there, it's all based in the power of positive psychology. And that for me, like, I have immersed myself in and really learned to understand what that's all about. And it's a little different than, counseling. There are those people that are like a -10 to a 0 that need counseling. I was not in that negative space, but I wanted to be in a more positive space. And that really was like the light to my fire of who I am now. And, we all need to seek out those things and dabble. Like, I'm not a yoga person. I'm not a runner. I'd love to be someday, maybe. Maybe
too.
not, try it for a day. But like, we have to find what works for us. And that recipe is ever changing and constantly slowly chipping away. And I think one thing, because even just me being on this podcast now, I worry about those that have been with me on my journey that might feel bad, that like, oh gosh, wish I could have done more to help Erica, or oh my gosh, I was her coworker and I had no clue that she was hiding this. Like, being empathetic and being kind to others is so critical, but it really is within each of us to tackle our own paths. And so, like, for example, I love my husband, and he has been there for me through thick and thin, and his humor is unreal. Had I seen that humor in my deepest days, and like, maybe I could have pulled myself out of it quicker. And I think we need to look for inspiration in our daily lives because it's all around us. It might be that neighbor that we chat with briefly, or, our dog that does something silly that makes us laugh, and like savoring those simple moments to like build off of all those small things to make it something bigger. And so, like, to the point of, yeah, only you can make yourself happy. My friend Jen was right. Like, only we can make ourselves happy, but like, what makes us happy and the path to getting there is so different for each and every one of us.
Yeah. My husband gave me some really good advice, and, I talk about social media a lot, and I probably will on a lot of these podcasts, but it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
So you're scrolling through and you see all the happy stuff and everybody living these extraordinary lives, but you don't see the struggle. No one's going to post those. And so if you're scrolling through your feed and you're a social media person, like, and that doesn't resonate with you, unfollow it,
yeah.
right? Only put stuff into your brain that's going to motivate you and inspire you. Yeah. So that is like, it's that we call it the internal compass. It's like the yes or the no. And sometimes I see stuff, I'm like, oh, that's a definite no. I don't need that in my life. I don't need to keep seeing it. And that's why I'm a big fan of affirmations. We talked about this pre-show of those affirmations, because you're telling your brain all these things, and your brain starts to visualize you in these situations. And again, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do study it a lot. There's an amazing book called The Untethered Soul. It's one of my favorite books. Recommended by my life coach, Sandy Shea, with the Wildlife Wilderness Coaching here in Crested, Butte. And I'm meeting with him next week. But that book talks about the roommate, the person in our head that's always yapping in the back, and being able to be in control of that person and being like, yeah, thanks for your advice, but I'm not listening to you right now. Or like, being able to know that person's in there, and they just identify it as the roommate, and it's like a real person, right? Because it talks to you all day long.
Oh yeah.
And they say that, we have, my husband told me also to not quote specific numbers. So there are many, many, many negative thoughts, 50 or 60,000 a day or something like that, where are negative thoughts, right? And so the positive thoughts are the ones that are less. So creating habits in your life, books that you read, podcasts that you listen to. I mean, I love books. I love to read books.
That's awesome.
I did some research on some pretty successful people read about a book a week.
Wow.
A lot of because you're filling your brain with the knowledge that you need. And I've also heard stories with staff and people that have come through my life that, like, my father had depression, my mother had depression, and they feel that that's the only path forward for them. And it's clinically proven to not be true.
Totally.
You can change the neuroplasticity in your brain. And they've done tons of studies on this to where you can, it's all that stuff. It's affirmations. I mean, I love your affirmations that you were telling me about this morning. They're great.
I think one thing I do besides affirmations is I wear a hair elastic on my hair all the time. So my kids either don't pull at it or I don't pull out my own hair. But also it's a great way to stop my negative self-talk. So I call it snapping out of it. And like if I get a negative thought in my brain, like I just quickly, pull the elastic band and snap out of it. And that's my like immediate gratification of like, shut up thought, get out of my head, go. But on the contrary, looking at the positive, I like to go, oh, snap. Like, that was a good thing that happened. And one day I kind of tracked myself of looking at, like, how much I was negatively talking versus positively talking. And I was getting myself in a pattern for much more positive thought than I even knew about. And so snapping out of it was great.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's such a great idea.
It's simple. It's easy. And like, as you can tell, my elastic here has been stretched a lot. So like I'm doing a lot of snapping for good and bad. And it is that balance in life. And one thing for balance are my affirmations. And I have really tried to figure out what are those for me. And for everyone, they are different. For me, every day I say, be kind, be brave, be you, and be. And for being kind, it's being kind to others, but also being kind to yourself. I'm a super empathetic person, and I sometimes find that I'm over empathetic toward everyone else but myself. But when we show ourselves the same empathy that we often show others, like that's when others love us even more. Being brave, like we are always going to have things that are obstacles, small and big, and knowing that, like, hey, I never want to go to that place that I was at before when it was really, really, really bad. Like, and so bravery comes in many shapes and forms, and being brave every day is critical. Be you. I love this one the most. I mean, we all need to dance to our own song, ski to our own trail, whatever it is, like blaze our own paths for us and nobody else. And that's the thing, like my heart is like happy right now talking about that because it's someone that I wasn't for a long time. And the last one is be, simply be. And I like to say that every day with like a breath of be. And breathing is so critical to so many things, but it's savoring the small stuff and being in that moment and being just being. And it's really easy to get caught in the hustle and the bustle and juggle of life, but showing up to your own party every day is awesome.
Yeah, show up to your party. I love that. And
parties come in many shapes and forms. It doesn't have to be what is notoriously known as a party. A party can be celebrating the small wins of finally, taking that walk or taking that run if you're a runner. And again, kudos to all those runners out there, or having that sip of tea. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll make myself a cup of tea and then 3-4 hours later, I'm like, oh yeah, I made tea. But, celebrating that sip when you finally make time for it.
Yeah, that's kind of my party. My party is like at the end of the day, or I like to get up early, just like making a coffee or a tea and just sitting down and like watching the snow outside. That was never been a part of my life. I'm very type A personality. I move fast. I'm always moving. And, with my coaching, I work on that a lot. I work on, just slowing down. Like we're human doing, we're doing,
Yes.
But our title really is human being.
Yes.
But so much of us don't be. And again, I struggle with that big time myself and couldn't ever get a grip on it. So that's why I did get into life coaching. I love to hear that you love life coaching. It's really transformational.
Yes. It's my new jam.
Yes.
Like I don't want to ever stop it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anthony, if you're listening. I'm a lifer.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's definitely, and I've had many different kinds of life coaches too. I've had some that were more business directed. I've had ones that were more spiritual and like centering for me. So again, same thing with life coaching. There's many different versions of it. It's different for everybody. Can we talk about I just want to know, like, I know that the medicine didn't work for you.
Yeah.
What was the catapult for you? What, that's the word I'm trying to say. Catalyst? Yeah. What was the catalyst? What techniques did you learn? Like to finally say, you said you had a newborn, a toddler,
Yeah.
that whole situation in your life where you were feeling so overwhelmed.
The true motivation for me was finally realizing, like, okay, I'm bringing home this infant, and I have a toddler, and I have a husband and a job and friends, and how the heck am I going to be good for everybody if I'm not good for myself? And, when we all ride on airplanes, how they say, like, if the plane needs oxygen, give it to yourself first and others. Like, I was totally the type of person that would rather give everybody on the airplane oxygen before myself. And I quickly learned when I had Tommy, who's my son, and Mary Sue, who is now, oh my gosh, 2.5 tomorrow. I had way more responsibility than just myself. And, before I had them, my kitchen table was a ping pong table. And, like life changed and I slowly like graduated beyond that, like Crested, Butte, and, work hard, play hard mentality into motherhood. But motherhood is what made me realize, hey, you have some responsibilities here. And to be the best darn mom you can be, you better fix yourself. And those are powerful words. It was super hard to figure out how to tackle myself because no, medicine didn't work. Therapy didn't work. Self-love did. And slowly finding it within myself and I mentioned my husband being humorous and funny, and he is like a big teddy bear. And the more I leaned into what loved me the most, the more I could love myself. And like, he doesn't even realize that even every day when I was struggling, I saw his zest for life. And, how much he appreciated simple things, funny things, things that I might just look over. And then, like, that friend I often like to go for lunch walks with, like, seeing how they juggle everything that they have going on.
Are you guys chatting? Like when you're out with your friends, you guys are discussing your situations and how you all deal with it?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, we all have so many common threads. Like, we all have stuff that brings us down, right? And, like, gaining inspiration from those around us on how we overcome whatever is bugging us. And every day, if we're constantly moving forward, we're moving in the right direction. Like, we're all going to have ups and downs in life. And it's like quickly recovering from those tougher times and not letting things, like, I was so bad like even COVID, like when COVID hit, I was a presumed positive. I was not feeling well. I let myself get heart palpitations of anxiety to the point where this summer, I had to do like the Holter monitor for testing of what was going on with my heart. Did I have a heart condition? No, I had what's called anxiety. I've known that for how many years, and it's like, hang on, Erica, if you don't take care of yourself, and you're not going to be the person you want to be. And so, like, constantly having that check-in with myself of, like, literally, it's so simple, like, snapping out of it, but celebrating the wins of, oh, snap, when it's a good thing, and constantly checking my thinking. Like, I'm a thinker. And that's good, but rumination is not. And so juggling that thinking and overthinking and just not being so hard on myself. I mean, so often I would get so worked up at myself for being so hard on myself. So I was being hard on myself for being hard on myself. And that was such a negative spiral to a place that I never, ever want to go back to. And really, like, when we give ourselves the grace and the patience for looking, like, taking a step back and looking at all the good within us and around us, it's really powerful.
Yeah. And, I was talking to another guest this week about, sometimes it's so debilitating where you can't even, like, get up and brush your teeth in the morning or get yourself dressed or just go to the grocery store is an arduous task to even, like, go out because you're like, ugh, I got to see people and I don't feel great. So, just reiterating just like that little step. It doesn't have to be a big win, a big win, a big win, right? These are little tiny steps in that direction. And I love how you said about looking back. It's one of my favorite quotes. It says, don't look back. You're not going that direction.
Yeah.
We're going that way. And so being able to, forget stuff and not forget, but just, you're not looking that way. We're going forward and the stuff is behind you, and just staying focused on the front and moving forward and taking one little step. And for us, you have kids, you have a husband, there's people out there that have lots of stuff around to fill the time. And I wanted to just touch on the people that maybe don't have that. Yeah. Right? They're not surrounded by kids. Maybe they're single. Maybe they're alone. Maybe their family's far away. And sometimes that can even feel
even more isolating.
Even more isolated. So, I just wanted our listeners to know that, like, even when we're in that little space of just like feeling so isolated, it's okay to still take that small step.
Yeah. I mean, I think anyone suffering through whatever they're suffering with needs to know they're not alone. They're not the first person that's gone through it, and they're not the last person. And although each of us has different ways of handling and managing our emotions, like even at that, even when I said to Laura, like, look, this is what I'm going through. Like, I'm having nightmares. I am just not myself. I don't want to eat. I don't want to sleep. I'm exhausted. And granted, anytime you have a baby, there's some of that going on of not sleeping because you're exhausted. But I knew I wasn't quite right. And in how I was describing my feelings, she goes, Erica, I wish I could have I wish I could have tape recorded what you just said, because those feelings are so similar in postpartum depression, which, 1 in every 5 to 10 people typically has. And that's what goes diagnosed, not the undiagnosed stuff. And so those common threads of emotions that people have when they're suffering with things, they need to know that they're not alone. And it is okay to not be okay, but you have to seek out the resources available to you to overcome those obstacles. And that's the toughest part, right? Like, it's not easy to ask for help. But, like, how often have you or I asked for help, like moving a heavy box or furniture, right? Like, it's way easier to ask for physical help, or advice. Like, hey, even this morning getting dressed, I asked my husband, like, hey, do you like this? And he's like, you look great. And he said the right answer. But, like, when we ask for help, it's often very rarely about our help with our emotional baggage or our mental health. And that type of help is something that we need to ask for more when we need it. We shouldn't be afraid, because there are so many people out there that either have gone through it or are going through it or know somebody going through it, and giving ourselves that grace to get the help we need when we need it, because we're going to be so much better off for it.
Yeah. And I think that, just from observations and reading a lot of people may feel that it's normal to wake up that way, and it's normal to live with anxiety, and they do it for years and years and years, and they just don't ask for the help. Right. So they're living their lives with this constantly on them, and they can fix it, and they can live and wake up every morning and feel better.
Yeah.
But you have to take the steps, I think. And that's the message we're really trying to get out there.
Look at what's dragging you down and figure out how you tackle it.
Yep.
And tackling it feels good when you finally do.
It feels good. And do you think, how many years total do you think? Because you said you started.
Yeah. I mean, I am 33 and a half, and that happened right when I turned 10. So I'm not great at math, but
yep.
We're talking about almost 25 years here. Like, and that struggle, like, life is way too short not to be happy and to tackle our own well-being. And for me, I kind of ignored it a lot, or I got through it, a little bit here and there, but never fully got to a point of overcoming until I had, 2 beautiful kiddos that I was responsible for, and was like, man, if you love yourself, you're going to love everyone else way more, and they'll love you for it. And so it takes time. And I think that's one thing one reason why I was so excited to come here today is like, for me, this isn't just something that happened to me 3 years ago. 3 years ago today is what maybe dragged me down the hardest, but we have to give ourselves patience and the time to tackle it, knowing that it does take time. And for those that are able to overcome things quickly, that's awesome and amazing. But I think taking time for ourselves and tackling our difficulties is so critical, and being patient.
Yeah. And being patient and knowing that, like, you know, I always like to say life is amazing and beautiful and incredible and fun and incredibly hard.
Yes.
And, you know, as you get older, you know, it's not like we just figure it all out and everything's great for the duration of our life here on this beautiful planet. But, you know, challenges are going to come for our life. You know, we're going to lose family members. We're going to lose parents. I've had some friends that have lost children. I mean, there's just stuff coming at us constantly, and it's learning the foundation. That's why I love it's called Community Foundation.
Yes.
It's learning the foundation that's going to be able to like just get us all through these really difficult times, and try to, you know, fill them with fun and beautiful moments. And some aren't going to be, and that's okay.
And knowing what works for us when we are dragged down, and having those tougher times. Like for me, as easy as it was for me to isolate when things were super tough, now I know, like, I'm a connector. I need my people. I need maybe not 10, 20, 30 best friends, but I need a couple of those really close friends where when I'm dragged down the most, I need to say, hey, can we talk, or can we go for a lunch walk, or can we, you know, whatever it is. I mean, 2020 is weird. Like we don't see our friends nearly as much as we'd love to, but like figuring out what works for us. And, you know, I also know that when I get super busy, like I forget to eat or drink water, and it's like, Erica, like snap out of it. Like, take care of yourself, because if you take care of yourself, you're going to be able to take care of others way better.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I'll go days without eating sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like every night when I put my son to bed, he goes, we have our routine of, I tell him 4 stories because he's almost 4, and I give him a big hug and a big kiss and a little hug and a little kiss. Then I rub his head and I say, good night, best friend. And he goes, good night, best mom.
It's adorable.
And like, I hope that happens forever. It may not. I mean, he will become a teenager, but like, best mom, that's the title I want. And I think we all need to realize what our goals are and work toward them and focus on our well-being for whatever those goals are.
What advice, I know this is a cliche question, but it's real, right? What would you have told yourself? Like, what advice would you have given yourself, like when you were that 10 to 15-year-old girl?
Don't give a crap about what others think about you. Be you for you. And I think that was one really cool thing of when I went back to high school graduation. I had a friend tell me, Erica, I've always admired you for being you. And that was something I slowly worked out of, you know, from middle school to high school to like, I left high school early because I just didn't want to be there anymore and wanted to pursue college. And it was around that senior year or at graduation or something that friend was like, Erica, I've really admired how you have just not tried to go with, you know, how everyone else goes, and you've been your own person. And it took her telling me that of like, yeah, actually I have been. And that's the thing, be yourself. And it's hard when you're a teenager. It's hard when you're, and there's peer pressure. But again, like, march to the beat of your own drum, and you're going to be a way better person for it and way happier. Because if you try and be someone you're not, you're going to end up in this vicious battle. And that's a battle not worth fighting. Like, fight you for you.
Yeah. And I think that, like, even today, you know, with the with all the social media, the teenage suicide rates are up. And again, yes, they do this because they care what other people think about them.
Yes.
Or not. And a lot of those decisions are based on your perception of how people see you.
Yeah.
And so teenagers who are listening in, moms, get your teenagers to watch this, but like, don't put any weight on those things that you hear from social media and like your likes and I'm popular and that stuff. This stuff, it doesn't matter. You know, be you and be who you want to be, and don't be so concerned about what other people think of you. Everybody is going through their own stuff. We all are. And if there's anybody that isn't, I would love to have them on my show.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, that's the thing. Social media and that age group, it's so hard, and it's important for kids or teenagers to realize like social media is just quick glimpses of moments of people's lives. They don't see like the 37 selfies that they took before the really good one that they just got. And that's the thing, like, be you and be a good person and follow your dreams. Like, pursue what makes you happy. And or at least for me, that's worked. And I think it boils down to being a good person.
And so, you know, you're here today too because you feel like you've overcome and you're in a great spot. Like, what is life like now? You know, you have 2 kids, you have a husband, you have a cool job. Like,
yeah, it's still a crazy juggle. I mean, there are days where I don't brush my hair and I throw that beanie on for that Zoom meeting and people don't know that I'm still in my pajama pants. You know, like, I am not perfectly put together all the time. And I think that that's one thing of realizing that, like, you know, we can be happy, but we don't have to be the most organized. Like, if you looked at my kitchen cabinets, like, my spice drawer is not alphabetized. You know, like, things sometimes fall out. But it's a beautiful mess. And I think that's one thing of realizing, like, you know, yeah, I let the laundry wait to spend more time with my kiddo. I, you know, don't care if I get crayon on the walls. It's typically not me scribbling the crayon. It's 2 other toddlers I know. But, you know, realizing that, like, if we are doing things every single day toward, like, manifesting our own joy, then we're on a good track. And really figuring out, like, I surround myself with people that I want to be surrounded by. I took a job this summer toward doing amazing things for this community because that's where my heart was. And so now my job is communicating and raising money for the Community Foundation of the Gunnison Valley to benefit so many good things about what makes our community tick for so many good reasons. And that is fulfilling. And so, like, figuring out, like, where are you finding your fulfillment? And like, I don't have a perfect routine of, you know, like, in 2021, I have goals of, like, getting into meditation and yoga and more mindfulness. But, like, it's not a perfect recipe of every day, these are the 20 things that Erica does to be this perfect person. And then I think embracing imperfections has truly made me be able to be where I'm at right now. Because not every day is going to be beautiful. And I think that understanding if we're taking care of ourselves and taking care of others around us and again, surrounding ourselves with the right people, we're going to be on a good path.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my other favorite quotes is no rain, no rainbow.
Totally.
And, you know, you need those dark times to appreciate the ups and the good stuff and to be able to weigh those out and see the differences. And yeah, not being perfect. My spice drawer is a disaster. I actually just vacuum it out every couple weeks, but
that's a great idea.
You know, but life isn't perfect and,
No.
and just be you. You know, I have a 3-year-old daughter and I try to teach her breathing techniques. I really, really hope that our society and community starts putting some of those mindful practices into kindergarten, first grade. It's the same thing. Like, you know, they teach home ec, how to sew and how to bake. Do they do home ec anymore?
I don't know.
I don't know if they do home ec, but home ec was a big thing. And they were teaching us life skills.
Yes.
Our life skills were how to bake and how to sew. And the life skills that we really need to be teaching our children are how to handle emotions and deal with those in a way where we don't have to feel scared or ashamed or invest 10 years into hiding.
Yes.
So I think those skills are just so important. And I mean, there are schools doing stuff like that, but
Yeah.
teaching our kids. I wear a bracelet every day. It says breathe. I got this at Pooh's Corner right locally. And I remind myself, and my computer says, what is your breath doing right now? And if you look at my hostess stand at work, it says, what is your breath doing right now? So putting reminders, do you put reminders around your house, on your mirror when you're getting ready?
Yeah. We have one on our bathroom mirror that, it's, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting what it says and I look at it every day. We have a reminder. It basically says, like, don't hide who you are because you're becoming who you want to be. And I think that's, yeah, don't hide who you are because you are becoming who you want to be. And that's a reminder that both my husband and I have for ourselves that, we put it up last month in our mirror. And that's something that's been super helpful for both of us. Like, hey, you know what? Like, we all have things that make us who we are. And we can't hide our personalities and our feelings if we're actually tackling them to be our best selves. And I know, like, becoming our best self sounds so, like,
Cliche.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, be who you want to be in life. And if you're shooting for that, and if you're making strides at that, that's good.
Yep.
And so, like, I'm a sucker for inspirational quotes, and I'll, like, save it in my phone, and I'm with you on social media. Like, if it's something I see that's going to drag me down or make me feel bad about myself, I just don't, buy into it. But, like, if it's a quote that I see that I love, I'm like, ooh, save that. And, surrounding ourselves with inspiration in whatever shape or form that is critical.
Yep. And it's definitely, being yourself. And I'll touch on that for a second. It's like, I teach my son is 16 and I tell Harkin all the time, I'm like, Harkin, be the true you. So you don't have to remember who you are.
Yeah.
I study a lot of Gandhi's principles, and one of his is, it's called absolute values. And absolute values is, I am the same person when I'm here on this podcast talking to Erica. I'm the same person when I'm reprimanding my 16-year-old for coming home late. I'm the same person when I'm at an employee meeting with my staff. I'm the same person that I am with my 2-year-old. I don't have to remember who I am because I'm being who I am all the time.
Own it.
And I try to teach my son that. I'm like, Harkin, just be you. You don't have to remember who you are then. You don't have to, like, dictate who you are because you're talking to this person or you're talking to this person and now you have to change your whole personality. Like, just being true to yourself. And one thing I wanted to talk about too was as an employer, and to employers out there, is really trying to help your employees through their mental health journey. Like, I'll give you an example. I had a young boy come in this summer, right in the middle of a chaotic summer, and sat down and I said, hey, what do you want to do? He's like, well, I was thinking I could be a busboy. And I said, all right, and the stash is high paced. It's a fast environment. We're getting thrown at from all areas. And I'm like, how do you handle, like, direction? If someone's like, hey, go bust that table. Can you go do that? Can you go do this? And he just looked at me and he was like, no, that's not good for me. And I was like, okay, so what do you like to do? And he's like, I like to do things like repetitive, same types of things. And I'm like, perfect. How about weighing and scaling dough? And we put this particular person in a different area, and he completely excelled at it. And last night, I walked by, he's been with us 6 months, and I was like, I gave him the head nod when I walked by, and he gave me the head nod back, because he really, really is thriving and loves the position, and he doesn't have to do it with anxiety. And he, that's important for us as employers, to not just discount somebody because they let us know that they have a mental health issue, but guide them through the journey and welcome them, and don't make them feel like, that it's more than that.
Building him up from his strengths. And I think that's one thing we all need to realize is we all have strengths, and so often it's easy to disregard them. But whether it's us or a friend or a colleague or someone that is, your employee, like, using their strengths to help them be in the right environment to be successful.
Successful. And it's just, there's no better feeling than that. There's no better feeling when I walk by, and I have had many employees over the years and different aspects that have struggled and stuff. And just to watch them thriving is one of my greatest successes. It really is. Thank you so much for joining us today, Erica. You're such a cool girl, and I can't wait. I want to meet your kids. And, for doing the podcast with us today, we wanted to buy you dinner at the Stash.
Oh, thank you.
So I'd love to invite you and the family and the kids in to eat with us. I just wanted to thank you guys all for watching. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for being vulnerable and for also encouraging me to be vulnerable. I mean, it's talking about this stuff isn't always easy, and, digging deep within ourselves to help ourselves and others is ultimately what you're trying to do here. So thank you for doing amazing things for our community, whether it was feeding so many people through COVID or now trying to help reduce the mental health stigma in our community. You are an inspiration for us all.
Thank you. And I'm super excited to be partnering with the Community Foundation and just to be able to get this word out more and help so many people overcome their obstacles. And thank you so much.
Do good, feel good.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.